And welcome back to Wine and Wine with your host, Sam Loy, and myself, Russell Cutting. Finally, we find ourselves in lands and artifacts. So, once more with feeling, why don't we delve into this marvelous set, Innistrad, Crimson Vow. Samuel, take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Russell Cutting. I really appreciate that. That was a very smooth intro. And lovely to hear you. I don't know who you were imitating, but that person was David Attenborough, I should say.
There was something.
There was something.
They were.
Well, a very lovely voice, regardless.
Look, we have to have a modicum of professionality here. This is a very serious broadcast.
It is a serious broadcast, and not that we are broadcasting, but I would say the modicum of respect is all we can afford. We're low budget. So let's move on to lands.
Tell me about your estate. Tell me about, as you are of the landed gentry.
I am
Tell
landed
me
gentry of the Loy clan. Look, all I can say is that we secretly control the government behind the scenes. But no, I didn't say that. Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry
Nothing
about it,
to
guys.
speak here.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Secret lizard people. What? Yeah. Let's talk about land. Not lands, land. So we did the 5 important lands. There's not many lands in the set. We're not going to talk about Evolving Wilds. You've seen that before. We
So
are
good. Love Evolving Wilds, by the way.
big fan.
Love Evolving
I
Wilds.
tell you what, I'm a bit of a hipster with this. So I'm more of like a Terramorphic Expanse kind of guy. But look,
Same
we
shit,
make
different
do.
thing. I would rather Terramorphic Expanse, but Evolving Wilds has the moniker, which is more the vernacular, which is
the
more easily
vernacular.
acceptable.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind having both at the same time again. That was pretty cool.
Oh, so hot right now, just like Hans.
Just wild.
Tell me about the Voldaren estate. If not, I'll tell you about it.
Yeah, why don't you tell me about it?
Right, so this is the vampire-themed land, very good for the commander players, and quite possibly extremely good for standard players. Tap for a colorless? Sure. Tap, pay a life, add 1 mana of any color for the vampires. Quite good. So we have
Vampire.
Vampire, the Nosferatu. We have a dual-colored, potentially tri-colored, should Edgar Markov, which we did not cover, being an Orzhov vampire rare, which is good for the tribal shit. Those things are
So
good.
mad.
Yeah, and the art is among the worst I've ever seen. However, the interesting part about this land is the 5-tap Naked Blood token. That seems expensive. However, for every vampire you control, this costs 1 less. So at a certain point in the game, blood tokens they're fine. They're slightly worse. Well, I feel like they're slightly worse than the clue token. You're not accruing card advantage, you're accruing card quality, you're paying less mana for it, but you at a certain point this can just tap if you have enough Vampire Nosferatu to make one of these blood token, and that should not be overlooked. Plenty of the vampires in this set, which we have covered and not covered, interact favorably or at least in conjunction with blood tokens or the number you have. So this will be important if vampires are the deck, both in standard and potentially reaching back at least into historic. That's my
Yeah, I think it's a good modern card as well.
Okay.
I don't know if vampires are good enough there, but we'll see. Meaningful thing you just brought up there. We didn't cover a lot of the vampires, a lot of the zombies, or a lot of the spirits in this set, but that's sort of where the power level is. If this set is good, it's because of its tribal members. Many of which we covered the ones we found exciting, but there are extra ones out there, so go have a look for yourself if you haven't seen them yet. I think that this card in particular adds reliability to a 2, maybe 3 color aggro deck, gives you a secondary dual source of color, and it makes me feel very confident that I can play a red-black aggro deck, which is vampire themed, and get away with it in terms of mana, being the major restriction that I felt we had in the format just passed. The creative blood token ability is really cool, actually, I reckon, anyway, that you can actually meaningfully do something with this land even when you're really committed to board already. So, yeah, just a big fan. I think it works really well. But
yeah, the fact that it has like the fail state, it adds mana, which is about like they don't make these non-basic lands completely debilitating like they have done in the past. So it can
Like
still do a thing.
ancient Zigiot or whatever it is.
Ancient Ziggurat, yes.
Ziggurat.
Yeah, that sort of thing. And the other two abilities are good to very good. So yeah, extremely powerful non-basic land. So.
Very cool art as well. Like really puts you in the place. It kind of looks like it's Castlevania Castle, but like it's cool.
It's very Castlevania Castle. It's
got the same
art, a spray
spires.
gas as well.
Yeah. It's cool. I like it a lot. All right, cool. Awesome. Let's move on real quickly to our artifacts, aka color section. Here is the least exciting of them. There's not many. Investigator's Journal. This is interesting mostly because it is a clue. We have seen this before with food, that they have had food type cards or super type cards. I think subtype. Sorry, my bad. This card I think is a interesting card in some decks. It's really weird. It's really hard to trigger this profitably. Like when you want to play this to get the most counters on it, it's sort of also when you don't want to spend the mana on it. I don't know. This seems like a commander card to me.
So it's super slow. This is something a pure control deck might use in conjunction with the white Wrath spell we were talking about earlier, but that would cost a total of 7 mana. Potentially you would play this on turn 4 before you cast it on turn 5 to recoup. Thankfully, its flaw is that it cycles for 4 mana, which is not great. But the absolute fail-safe is it recoups the card. It's very slow. It looks as though it could be a very good card advantage engine, but it's slow, it's expensive, and as you mentioned before, it is at its most effective when you are at the greatest disadvantage. So we did, like Sam mentioned, we did put it in here because itself is an artifact clue that has some ramifications with some cards like Tireless Tracker, but it's just more of a curiosity. I don't believe in this card, but there's enough words on it that we have to at least mention it, and the set is pretty skint for artifacts to talk about.
That's very true. I also like just the existence of suspect counters.
Much like Croak counters.
Yeah,
it's
not quite as good as Croak counters, but they're both pretty good. Like most sets with like a counter that well named. So anyway, I feel adequately covered for a card that but look, you know, there's some power level here, but it's really there for, I feel, Commander. All right, moving right along. Oh, this is a dollhouse I don't want to be a part of, but also I kind of want to be a part of it. The Dollhouse of Horrors. The Dollhouse of Horrors. I really like that in the art we've got these like creepy toy things, but there's also just giant eyeball looking through the window, like just in the background. It's just really cool.
Just fucked.
Yeah, big fan. So exile a creature card from your graveyard, create a token that's a copy of the exile card, except it is a 0/0 construct artifact in addition to its other types, and it has this creature gets +1/+1 for each construct you control. It gains haste until end of turn, activate only as a sorcery. This card is a combination of other effects we've seen before in a really weird way. Construct is a very common creature type. I don't think we've got a lot at the moment, but it is one of the most common creature types, and there's normally nothing that refers to it, just because it's on a lot of artifact creatures. I like this card a lot. Making an infinite, theoretically infinite, let's say, supply of creatures that get bigger the more times you can activate this card is pretty cool. You need to be self-milling a bit, fair enough. And they're not that big to start with, also fair enough. But in terms of a persistent advantage engine, this does a lot of work.
So this will ruin a lot of games for Limited.
Yeah.
I suppose a few things to note. A lot of people might get confused because we have in recent memory, particularly involving Khan and Urza constructs, which gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. This is not quite the same token here. This only counts constructs you can control. That said, this is something you can stack up over time. It's an expensive cost to put on the battlefield, but a very inexpensive cost to activate. Does tap, can only be active once per turn, very slow, is very powerful. We've seen tier 2 decks do okay with things like Seance, which is what this vaguely reminds me of, where it is
Me too.
if like not just making a token, it's making a copy of the token, so that includes any enters the battlefield, leaves the battlefield, activated abilities, triggered abilities, all that sort of thing. It is colorless, which obviously is a boon. The art is freaking dope. I want this to be playable. I want there to be a deck around it. Again, I'll buy someone a beer if they manage to get something going on here. I want to see it, but I can't quite.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to view it. Hopefully, the access to Abrades will stop this from ruining too many limited games. I don't know though. It might just be too busted there. There's a few really big bombs in this format, so we'll have to see how the limited format is. But yeah, well, all right, well covered, Russ. I think we will move on to the one we know will get played, which is Lantern of the Lost.
Yeah, very Soul Guard Lantern-esque.
Yeah, so enters the battlefield, you exile target card from a graveyard. Pretty much on rate the same as Soul Guard Lantern, I think. And then you exile it to exile all cards from all graveyards, and then you draw a card. So the previous version of this, the proposition was that you could draw the card or exile the graveyard. This one is that you get to do both, but you have to hit your own graveyard at the same time. So really interesting card. This is going to matter a lot for Historic. It's really close because we have Relic of Progenitus in that format as well. When being able to hit a specific card when it enters, rather than taxing one card out of the graveyard every turn, it might get it played. It depends on the format. Hey, it's a long line of cards with very similar effects, and we're getting heaps of different versions of it. I like this one though. I think it's a good one.
Yeah, it's getting tougher and tougher to decide which, like, at this point we now have enough options that there is no strictly better choice. It does become completely contextual as to whether you need to target something specific or whether graveyard density as a whole. I think for Historic, because we don't have things like dredge or whatever, it's not a matter of graveyard velocity, it's a matter of graveyard quality. So the targeted ability on the front side is extremely valuable. This might... it's one of those things, right? So Soul Guide is the card you have when you use your graveyard, but your opponent also uses their graveyard. This is, I don't use my graveyard, but my opponent does.
Very similar to Relic, yeah. It's very weird.
But you get to target something on the get-go. So if we have a metagame where, and I believe this is better in Historic than Relic of Progenitus, because Relic of Progenitus deals with graveyard velocity, whereas this deals with, graveyard density, whereas this deals with graveyard velocity.
Yeah, so I think for me, the reason I like this card is that most of the time in Historic, I really want to deal with one card in a graveyard, or they're doing so much stuff I need to get rid of the whole thing. Yeah. And that's sort of what we're talking about and what Russell was mentioning there. I like this to get rid of a Commit to Memory or an Unburial Rites or something like that. That being said, yeah, it's a pretty medium print, but it's a relevant one. So if there is something that gets good in Standard, this is by far the best effect because it's the only one.
The only one.
It's a competitive one. It's a relevant competitive one. So powerful print, one of, I think, probably the best artifact in the set, with very few good artifacts, of course. But yeah, just does a thing we can already do in a way.
It is our Soul Guide Lantern, which saw Standard play it is our Relic of Regentus. It is just what we are dealt with in Standard, so it will see play should Graveyard strategies come onto the rise. So it is a convenient and useful tool and effective. And then in older formats, it is just another mode of which we can select from and decide. So the tension has been between Relic and Soulguard Lantern, and now we have this as well as just like another level depending on what our deck is trying to accomplish versus what we're trying to prevent our opponent's deck from accomplishing.
Absolutely. Well, that's it. This is the last
Is
part
it?
we have. Yeah, that's it.
Heck.
End of slideshow. So,
Okay.
thanks so much for sticking with us today, guys. Russell, so thank you so much for joining me. I had
No,
a
my
lovely
pleasure.
evening with some
Yeah, it
lovely
was great.
wines. Hopefully this set's gonna do all the things that we would like it to do in terms of making Standard a relevant format again, and just being a fun time. And I have some high hopes in those regards.
Cool. Any closing thoughts?
No more than that. There's a few things that we didn't get to in this, and I would like to come back to you guys at some point soon, and maybe either do gameplay videos or have a little bit of a chat about how Standards ended up. So if you'd like to hear either of those things, see either of those things, then let us know, and we'll endeavour to get back to you with those. But for Russell, I'm Sam. Great to see you, and we'll catch you guys next time with another one.
Thanks so much for listening. Hope you're having a lovely time, whatever time that is.